Multiplying radicals. When multiplying radicals, multiply the coefficients and then multiply the radicands. You can only multiply radicals if they have the same index. So both of these radicals in the next question are square roots, so we know that we can multiply them. To multiply them, we need to multiply the numbers out front by the other numbers out front, and the numbers underneath by the other numbers underneath. So multiplying the numbers out front, we have 2 times 4. Underneath the root sign, we would have 7 times 75. 2 times 4 is 8. Under the root sign, 7 times 75 is 525. I can break 525 down into 25 times 21. Simplifying further, square root of 25 is 5, so the 5 would come out front, and under the root sign would still be 21. And 8 times 5 is 40, so I would have 40 root 21 as my final answer. There's no perfect squares contained in 21, so I can't simplify it any further. So in general, if we have m to root a times n to the kth root of b, we'll multiply the numbers out front, so m times n, and then multiply the numbers underneath, so a times b, as long as the index of both of those are the same. And just a reminder that if k is an even index, the numbers underneath, so a and b, have to be greater than or equal to 0. Let's look at a couple more examples. Multiply. Simplify the products where possible. So in this first question, because we have an x under the root sign, there are some restrictions on what x can be. So x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Now that we've looked at that part of the question we don't need to worry about anymore. So I have one term, or one radical, being multiplied by another radical. Means that I should have one term in my answer. To find this term, we're going to start by multiplying the numbers out front. So negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Under the square root sign, 2x times 6 is 12x. Now we want to see if we can simplify. So simplifying under that root sign, I know that I can break the 12 into the perfect square 4 times 3, and I still have the x. So that's going to give me square root of 4 is 2 out front of the root sign, 3x underneath. Again, to finish simplifying, I can multiply those numbers that are out front. So we end up with negative 24 root 3x. The next question has a single term being multiplied by two terms. So one term multiplied by two terms means that I should have two terms in my answer before I start simplifying. The first one comes from multiplying these two terms together. To do that, we're going to multiply the numbers out front. So 7 times 5 is 35. Under the root sign, 3 times 5 is 15. Then take the term out front and multiply it by the second term in the bracket. So multiplying the numbers out front, 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. And under the root sign, 3 times 3 is 9. We now want to simplify, see if we can simplify anything under the root sign. There's nothing to simplify with 35 root 15. However, the square root of 9 is 3, so we end up with 42 times 3. So 35 root 15 minus 42 times 3 is 126 as our final answer. In this next example, we have a binomial times a binomial. So 2 terms times 2 terms means we should have 4 terms in our answer. First one comes from multiplying the first 2 terms together. So 8 times 9 is 72. Under the root sign, 2 times 5 is 10. Then we do 8 root 2 times 6 root 10. So 8 times 6 is 48. Under the root sign, 2 times 10 is 20. Then we move to the second term in the first bracket and multiply it by the first term in the second. Negative 5 times 9 is negative 45. Under the root sign, we just have 5 because the negative 5 doesn't have anything under the root. Then negative 5 times 6 root 10 is negative 30 root 10. See if we can simplify anything under the square roots. The only one that can be simplified is this root 20, so let's rewrite everything else. So 72 root 10 plus 48. 20 can be broken into 4 times 5. Nothing else can be simplified. So continuing to work on simplifying this second term, we end up with positive 48, and the square root of 4 is 2, so we end up with 2 root 5. Again, everything else stays the same. (48) times 2 is 56. Sorry, let's try 96 root 5. Minus 45 root 5 minus 30 root 10. Now we can look for like radicals that we can combine. So we have two terms that are square root 10s. If I have 72 and I take away 30, I end up with 42 root 10s. And if I have 96 root 5s and I take away 45, I end up with positive 51 root 5s. Last example is a cube root. We have one term out front being multiplied by a binomial. So one term times two terms means I should have two terms in the first step. First one comes from multiplying these two together. The number out front of the second radical is the number 1. So 1 times 9 is 9. Under that cube root sign, 2 times 4 is 8. W times W is W squared. Then we're going to multiply these two terms. So 9 times 7 is 63. Under the cube root sign, 2 times 28 is 56, and we have 56W. Reminder that this W greater than or equal to 0 is the restrictions because what's under the root sign has to be a positive value. Okay, simplifying those cube roots. The cube root 8 is a perfect cube, so I can simplify it. We end up with 2 cube root. W squared does not contain any perfect cubes, so it's going to stay stuck under the root sign. The second term, we end up with 63, and simplifying what's under the root sign. 56 contains a perfect cube. 56 is made up of 8 times 7. And so simplifying here, 9 times 2 is 18 cube root of W squared plus 63 times the cube root of 8 is 2. And then we are left with cube root 7W. So 18 cube root W squared plus 63 times 2 is 126 cube root 7W. I can't combine those terms because one is W squared and one is 7W. They are unlike terms.